You ever feel like you're being pulled in a million different directions at once? You've got this burning desire to be everything, to do everything, but you're just completely overwhelmed by it all? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into in this explainer. It's this incredibly personal story, this spiritual journey about finding your true calling when you're facing down these huge ambitions and, your own sense of weakness.
Wow. I mean, right out of the gate, we're talking about a soul that is just overflowing. This isn't just about wanting one single purpose. She wants to be a Carmelite nun, a mother of souls, but then she says, surely this should be enough. Nope. She also feels the call to be a warrior, a priest, an apostle, a doctor of the church, and a martyr. It's this unbelievable desire to embody every single heroic role you can possibly imagine within her faith.
And right there, that's the central problem, isn't it? The huge conflict of this story. How can one person, a single finite soul, possibly contain a whole universe of desires? It's kind of like that classic paradox, an unstoppable force, this boundless ambition, meeting an immovable object. The simple fact that you only have one life to live.
And we're not talking about some vague wish to be great here. The scope of this is just huge. She wanted to feel the specific zeal of a crusader. She wanted to be a priest, just like St. Francis of Assisi. She wanted to suffer every single torment that the martyrs went through, to be a prophet, a doctor, to preach on every continent. I mean, this was a fire that was consuming her whole being.
But here's the thing, and this is the real twist. All this overwhelming ambition, it wasn't making her feel strong or joyful. Not at all. It was actually a source of intense suffering for her. She even calls it a real martyrdom. So instead of feeling empowered by these incredible desires, she felt totally tormented because she couldn't possibly achieve them all.
And this is where we get to the absolute heart of her crisis. It wasn't just the physical limitation, the fact that she couldn't be in two places at once. It was this painful, agonizing gap between these grand, heroic dreams and, well, how she actually saw herself.
Just look at this. This comparison really lays out the contradiction she was living with every single day. Can you imagine? On one hand, you have the heart of a warrior, but in reality, you feel weak. You have the desire of an apostle, but you feel so small, so insignificant. You long to be a martyr, but you know you're imperfect. You want to be a doctor of the church, but you feel foolish. In her own words, she saw herself as the littlest and the weakest soul there was.
So that's the question that just haunted her, right? How can a soul that feels so incredibly small contain ambitions that are just astronomically vast? It must have felt like some kind of cruel joke from God. And finding an answer wasn't just a curiosity, it was absolutely essential for her to find any kind of peace.
So, what do you do when you hit that wall, when you feel that kind of despair? For her, the big turning point didn't come from trying to dig deeper inside herself, it came from looking outward, to a source of ancient wisdom.
Yeah, in a moment of just total frustration, feeling completely lost, she opened up the epistles of St. Paul. She was desperate, just searching for an answer, any answer that could explain what she was going through. She was trying to find her place in the grand scheme of it all.
And as she was reading 1 Corinthians, something just clicked. You know how St. Paul describes the church as a body? A single body, but with all these different parts, eyes, hands, feet, and each one has a vital job to do. Well, as she's reading this, she has this profound realization. All these noble roles exist, but the most essential part, the one that gives life to all the others, seemed to be missing from the list.
And that single thought led to this incredible, life-altering solution. This was the answer that would finally bring her peace and put an end to that agonizing conflict that was tearing her apart inside. Think about it. In a body, what's the one organ that powers everything else? The one part that, without it, nothing else can function. It's the heart.
And that was her eureka moment. Charity, love, gave her the key. She suddenly understood. The church, this mystical body, it has a heart, and that heart has to be on fire with love. This wasn't just another role to add to her impossible list. No, this was the central, life-giving force behind everything.
So you see, her real calling wasn't to be a warrior or a martyr or an apostle. Her true vocation was love itself. By choosing to be love in the heart of the church, she realized she could be the driving force behind all those other roles. After all, what makes an apostle preach? Love. What helps a martyr endure? Love. What makes a warrior fight for a cause? Love. In finding love, she realized she could finally be everything all at once.
You can just feel the pure joy,
The absolute relief in her words here. The war that was raging inside her was finally over. That martyrdom of having all these infinite desires was transformed into the peace of having one single, all-encompassing purpose. She had found her place. She was home.
Okay, so that's a massive revelation, right? But how do you actually live that out day to day? Well, it led to this totally radical new philosophy for her, which she called her little way. It was all about turning what she saw as her greatest weakness into her biggest strength.
So instead of fighting against her littleness, she decided to embrace it completely. Her new path, her philosophy, was to live out this huge cosmic love in small, simple, everyday actions. She learned to trust that these tiny acts, as long as they were done with immense love, were her way of being a warrior and a martyr and an apostle. Her soul would be a little victim, offered up to God not through some grand heroic deed, but through quiet, constant, unwavering love.
And she had this beautiful way of describing it. She called it scattering flowers. Every small sacrifice, every kind word, every patient glance at someone who was annoying her, those were her flowers. She resolved to never let a single opportunity, no matter how tiny or insignificant it seemed, pass her by without turning it into an act of love. This is how she took that giant vocation and made it real, practical, and part of her daily life.
And just like that, what she always thought was her greatest weakness, her littleness, actually became her greatest strength. That feeling of being small and inadequate was no longer a barrier, blocking her from her dreams. Instead, it became the perfect, empty vessel, just waiting to be filled with a love so vast it could hold every vocation and, in its own quiet way, actually change the world.
And that really leaves us with a powerful question for our own lives, doesn't it? We spend so much time searching for the right job title, the perfect mission, that one grand purpose that's supposed to define us. But what if our true vocation, our greatest purpose, isn't found in what we do, but in the love with which we do it? What if the most important thing we can be is simply the heart?